okay, what am I gonna do this year? And I was just looking through things I already had, and here's a drawing that I did with like the stick to show people that, you know, like you don't have to have the same amount of control. And you can see what I've done is trace the dark areas. Now I only have two, light and dark, but I can play around with that too. Like some of my light areas could be a color and some of them could be the white of the paper. But I've now got my plan, right? And I'm gonna keep this handy so that if I have any questions when I'm waxing about what I want to wax, I can refer to it, and I encourage you to bring your original over too. Because when you get over here, it can be confusing sometimes where you start looking and you're like, wait, am I doing this section or am I doing this section? And you always have to think you're painting out what you want to keep. So anything that I want to keep white, I'm going to paint with wax. Anything that's black, I'm going to leave so that I can stain it. We've got a double boiler system set up here, okay? The wax is in the tins, and then there's water in the pan so that the wax isn't in direct contact with the heat for safety reasons, right? The tins have to heat up. I'll do it for you each morning so that it's kind of ready to go when you come in here. And there will be a cup of water over here in case, as will happen, the water all evaporates out so that you can replace it so that we don't have dry heat underneath the little tins of wax themselves. It's a new, brand new skillet, so I'm getting to know it here this morning. And it's melting pretty good right now, around 200. So maybe between 200 and 300 will be a good sort of sweet spot. And if it feels like that's too cool, we'll turn it up a little bit. Or if it feels like it's too hot and, you know, everything's boiling away too much, we'll adjust it down. But let's start there. We got our wax brushes in here. There are also these, they're called jaunting tools, and the idea would be that you scoop up wax and you kind of tip to get it to start running out the tip for little fine details. You may try them, but I will remind you that there's a learning curve there, and even though it might look really, really easy, when you start to actually do it, it's like, oh, nothing's coming out, and you try to heat the tip back up because maybe the wax solidified in the tip, and you come over here and you start again and it spills out over this and that sort of thing. So most folks just use the brushes themselves, but we also want to keep those kind of warm so that they don't kind of cool as you're going to make a mark. When you are waxing, we have here, and then over in the cabinet there's open doors, there's more of them, so you can find like one that fits your needs perfectly. But these little frames, and what you want to do is take some pins, they're here, and pin your paper to the frame. What that does for you is it elevates it while you're waxing. That way, if your brush is really loaded with wax and you're doing a little teeny area and more wax comes off your brush than you anticipate, it won't pool and stick to the surface of the table and then spread out on you. It'll drip and it'll fall onto the table, but you won't lose your detail itself. So you want to pin it up. Sometimes you forget. If you forget, are you going to ruin your piece? No. Like, remember the wabi-sabi idea? Some of the things that we do might not turn out exactly the way that we anticipate, and that's okay. That's part of this whole process, is that some things are going to happen that we want, and some things are going to happen that we didn't anticipate, and how we deal with those things is part of the art that's going on here. So let's see if this is warm enough. Looks like it is. And all I'm going to do is dip my brush in there and then kind of pull it on the side so I get rid of a little excess. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to touch, and this is perfect. So what you can see if you look closely is how it looks like it's penetrating the paper and it looks wet, right? If it looks like a lump on the surface and it's white in color instead of this kind of orangey color, then the wax isn't hot enough. I'm going to turn it back down just a smidge. If you're not sure if it's penetrating the paper or not, then you can look at it on the back and you can hold it up to the light and you can see if it's gone through both sides or not. Let's say it didn't go through both sides. What do? Well, it is totally legitimate to come in and take some wax and paint the back side. Now that wax is going over wax, so you can see the difference between where it looks like it just penetrated and worked out perfectly and where it starts to look white. That white color will tell you that it's only on one side and not the other. So I got a lot of waxing to do, right? If I'm going to do everything that I want to keep white here, but so that you can see the rest of the process, what I do after I wax, I'm going to take my pins out. You can leave them in the board, or you can put them back in there. And then I've got these sheets of paper, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my paper on that white piece of paper, and I'm going to get a different brush. I almost had everything ready to go. And I'm going to pick a color, and what we've done in the past is we put out the liquid watercolors, but we've also put out some little cups, because let's say you want an orange, but you don't want it to be the orange right from the bottle. You know? You could mix in a little yellow and a little orange and a little brown and make up your own color and save it. And then in the sharing, sort of mindset, we just left them out so other people could use them too throughout the day. If there are people in the other class that want that color or like that color. But if you love your color, then you can keep it, right? So can somebody grab me just a regular old paintbrush from over there and we'll just show you how this looks. Any brush, yeah, will work. Oh, this one's stiff. I'd get a softer brush. No, not right now, but in the future. So if you put your piece on this paper when you start to paint, then the paper is strong, but when it gets wet, it can be a little bit soft. So if you got a piece of paper underneath it, and when you pick it up, you're less likely to rip the corner of your piece of paper. And you can kind of see a little bit better too, I think. And when we put it on the drying rack, which we're going to have to clean off again, it looks like, because we're getting pretty close to the top, it won't penetrate and drip through onto somebody's work below it. But now I'm just going to pick up a little bit of this watercolor and start painting over the surface. And you can see that where my wax is, it's kept the white, and where there is no wax, it's gone yellow. So I'm going to have a little yellow spot on my face there, but now I can go back and say, okay, how much more do I want to do? Now tomorrow, when this is dry, I'll wax anything that I want to stay yellow. Might be nothing, I don't know, but it could be like kind of random decisions, or it could be just, all right, this area is going to be yellow on this side of my face, this area is going to be white on this side of my face, except for this one little white area. If you screw up, this is it, and then I'll stop talking. If you screw up and you wax someplace that you don't want to, we can get out the iron and try to get rid of the wax, but I'll tell you what, it's a little bit tough to get it all out of there. So we have more paper. If your first go around you're like, oh, I did it totally backwards, you can get a new piece of paper. But if it's just a little section, we can try to get that out of there. Or, as I've said before, you can look at it and say, well, what if it was like that? Let's see what happens. Because after I'm done with this process, I could come back in and get some acrylic paint and paint on that, or some Sharpie markers and draw over that and that sort of thing. So yeah, we can fix things, but be open to the possibility that something might be a little different than what you initially envisioned on this first piece. All right. Oh, should anything happen, this is probably the most important thing. If the water gets in with the wax, it's gonna pop and it's gonna like start splattering everywhere. And we don't want hot wax splattering everywhere. So the lid's always here. If anything starts to splatter, we do that, and you can just turn it off or unplug it and then let it all cool down and not worry about it. Now, did you hear what's happening right there? That little bit of condensation on there is starting to drop into the wax. So it'll happen at some point. There'll be a little bit of splattering this way and that way and that sort of thing. Just be ready. I don't know. Once it starts, don't expect it to go away right away. Just unplug it. We'll stop, heat it back up, make sure that we got good wax. I got more wax so we can get the bad wax out if it gets a bunch of water in it, if something spills or something like that. All right.